Note: the following video depicts a specific configuration of the notebook. The same removal and replacement procedures apply to all configurations of the notebook. Removal. Using one of the docking ports on the bottom edge of the tablet, carefully remove the POGO pin Mylar from the recess. Remove the four 2.5mm P0 Phillips-head screws from the bottom edge of the tablet. Note: using a suction cup is optional, but it may aid in the removal of the display panel assembly. Using a non-marring flat-bladed tool, carefully release the display enclosure from the display panel assembly. Caution: the touchscreen is very thin and easily damaged. Take extreme care when separating the display enclosure from the display panel assembly. Carefully lift the display enclosure off of the display panel assembly until you have access to the display panel cable and connector. Important: double-sided tape secures the lower edge of the display panel assembly to the display enclosure. Important: make careful note of the routing of the display panel and touchscreen cables for later replacement. Peel back the retention tape and disconnect the display panel cable from its connector on the display panel assembly. Using minimal force, lift the locking bar up on the touchscreen board ZIF connector and disconnect the touchscreen board ribbon cable from the touchscreen board. Caution: use care to prevent damaging the ZIF connector and ribbon cable. Remove the touchscreen board ribbon cable from the adhesive that secures it to the display panel assembly. Remove the display enclosure. Replacement. With the display panel assembly face down, position the display enclosure near the display panel assembly so that you have access to the display panel cable and connector. Insert the display panel cable into its connector on the display panel assembly and replace the retention tape. Insert the touchscreen board ribbon cable into the touchscreen board ZIF connector on the touchscreen board and press the locking bar down to lock the cable into place. Caution: use care to prevent damaging the ZIF connector and ribbon cable. Apply pressure to the touchscreen board ribbon cable to adhere it to the display panel assembly. Caution: to prevent any damage to the display panel assembly during replacement, ensure that there is no metallic debris attached to the magnets on the left, right, and bottom edges of the display enclosure. Align the edges of the display enclosure with the edges of the display panel assembly and place the display enclosure onto the display panel assembly. Starting with the top edge, gently press down on the edges of the display enclosure to secure it to the display panel assembly. Replace the four 2.5mm P0 Phillips-head screws into the bottom edge of the tablet. Place the POGO pin Mylar into the recess on the bottom of the tablet and apply pressure to adhere it into position.